Nancy wisely said, I got to turn the Titanic on this. And, you know, I asked her, what content are you seeing in your polling is most important to Black voters? And it was Medicaid expansion. So we went back to this footage we had taken in June. Sure enough, had exactly what we needed. Cut her an ad, got that to her, raised some money to actually push it out. And what we did is the party was not targeting anyone below a 40% turnout. And so to Amy's point earlier of how she really made her burst in her race was to say, we are gonna pay attention to these lower propensity turnout voters of color. So we made Nancy's piece with Black voters in mind, and we targeted all the way down to 0. And interestingly, the reason I had learned about this was because of my relationship with 31st Street, because you all were knocking doors and were telling me something's messed up here with this 40% propensity score, and they're not letting us knock lower, and this is a real problem. And that set off something in my mind where I started digging in with my campaign managers, and they were telling me the same thing. So we did what we do so well, which is we filled a gap that the party was not filling. And we said, okay, cool, you do what you're doing. We're gonna make this content and we're gonna talk to those voters. And Nancy knocked those doors, and she did some mail pieces and went down to 0 to those voters, and she won by 41 votes. So having said that, coming out of Virginia, now going to North Carolina, taking all those lessons learned, we all sort of have our eyes on that prize. And as you can hear, candidates like Amy have their eyes on that prize. There will be some battles with the party about where our funds going to be put. There's going to be a lot of, hey, we need to court moderate Republicans and white suburban women. And I'm going to push back on that for exactly the reasons Amy talked about. It is clear in so many of these flippable races that are on that slate that the key is activating lower propensity voters of color. And that means not just treating them as a GOTV audience that we talked to the last 2 weeks of the campaign and like cattle say, go to the polls because you're a voter of color. No, it means having the conversations that Amy's talking about. It means understanding how these issues impact voters of color differently. You know, COVID-19 being a perfect example. We're getting polling on that that's showing the way it impacts, and the things that voters of color are stressed about are different than they are from white voters. And so our candidates really need to understand that, and we need to craft messaging that communicates in that way. Amy is the perfect example of someone I love to work with. She's the quintessential state leg candidate. She's a woman who is not a politician. She's incredibly real and authentic. She had no plan to run for office ever, and so that's great. She's real. The downside is she has that built up a lifetime of name ID being a politician. So what I try to do with someone like Amy is we do a documentary style interview, and I listen to her. I listen to her story, and I try and figure out what the through line is. Now, with some people, it's more challenging to do that, and that's those stories I can tell later. There's some of 31st Street people's favorite stories is how we pull narratives out of people's life. Amy's is like an open book. You know, you listen to her, and it's very clear the lessons she learned from her grandmother about helping others, education being the vehicle from poverty to prosperity for her. And while many people in this world have a mentality of pulling up the ladder once they've achieved, you know, that prosperity, that's not Amy. Amy's way is to say, what can I do for everyone else, and how can I have the most impact? And so first it was in a classroom, and then it's like, oh no, but I want to affect more kids. So then it was a principal, and then it was really, wow, if I really want to affect these lives, I got to get rid of these bozos in Raleigh who are making the rules and don't know what they're doing. So Amy's an ideal candidate for me. She also clearly has an understanding of field, which I always describe what we do as being air cover. And if there isn't a good field plan, you know how that goes. So Amy's music to my ears because she's not afraid to knock doors and have that field plan. She's hamstrung though now because she can't knock doors. So the next best thing is to be able to create a video that can virtually knock doors for her. And that's what we've done, which I'm going to show to you. We're moving toward creating bio videos for folks that Amy, for instance, can be sending out to fundraise. We're not going to worry about whether we have the funds for ad buys right now. Right now, we think a bio intro piece is something that is very useful to be pushing out organically and also through virtual fundraisers. Amy's also endorsed by Future Now and I think Sister District, right? Yeah. So having a huge, high profile entities like that have already endorsed her and are sending donors toward her to be able to give them this video, they're thrilled. So this is more of what Julie was talking about, of really trying to leverage and make your investment just go as far as we can.